Hello folks, it's the genuinely beautiful and moronic hack. This week I have a new movie review as I have made time to go out and see the new Masters of the Universe film by Amazon and MGM Studios. My thoughts have been on this movie for, as of this recording, almost the entire day as I'm trying to get a feel of not only how I feel about the movie, but what is the current consensus on this film. Now, on the outset, there is a lot of doom and gloom about the movie, especially when it comes to performance, but I'm ignoring that. I'm not concerned about where the movie makes money. I'm more concerned of, is the movie good, worth watching, and entertaining? And to that end, I can answer that when I did see the movie, I was thoroughly entertained. And the more I thought about the movie, the more I've come to realize that I like the movie. However, I do understand if this movie is not for everyone. So right out of the gate, I do want to state that if you're actually a die-hard He-Man fan, whether you actually grew up during the time when the original cartoon was airing on TV, or you're someone who has amassed a collection of all the different toy lines of He-Man over the years and all the different shows that also have been developed in that same amount of time in this, almost 40 years of He-Man, I can understand if you're that type of fan that you will be disappointed by this movie because this version of He-Man, this version of Prince Adam, does not completely reflect what you would understand to be Prince Adam from the original show. In that case, I can actually understand it. If you're that type of fan, there will be things you will like about Masters of the Universe on the technical aspect and on the visuals, because the film does an amazing job of bringing Eternia to life onto the big screen and to bring in all the fan favorite characters in the same manner. But what will really divide, at least for the more hardcore audience, is the characterization of Prince Adam himself and the type of story that this film chooses to tell. So I'm saying that outright. If you actually are a big diehard fan of He-Man, I will be hesitant to say go out and see it right now. I will say wait till it's actually like on a streaming service and watch it one afternoon so you can judge for yourself if you enjoyed it. Again, this is strictly if you are a diehard He-Man fan. I am not a diehard He-Man fan. I know about He-Man since I was a kid, but I was never a fanatic of that franchise. I enjoy it for what it is, and as I've gotten older, I've gone to appreciate how the camp nature that the show it inherits. It is a campy show in the way that the 1960s Batman TV show is campy, and campy is not an equivalent to mean bad. What it means is that the show intentionally chooses to be absurd for the sake of entertainment. And in that sense, the Masters of the Universe film does have its moments of campiness to it that I find to be sincere. And that's the best way to make camp work, is that you have to be sincere. So I will give the filmmakers this, is that when they making this movie, obviously you could be cynical and see it as one big giant cash grab, because this really is. It's a cash grab on a legacy franchise. But the movie at least is being more than just that. And you can tell that the people making this movie are sincere about the franchise as a whole and making sure that the beloved characters are represented for the most part as how you remember. Since this is a PG-13 movie, so they are allowed to get away with actual deaths that you can't do in the original Filmation cartoon, and some swears here and there. So a lot more maturity, edginess to it, but not in the way that it's trying to be a dark, more mature story. No, they just take a little bit of more mature elements. For one, make it a PG-13 action movie, but also to use it for effect, because He-Man, Prince Adam, and Man-at-Arms Duncan they're from my point of view, the real characters who are given a very different characterization in order to tell the story this film is. Now, a second thing I want to add in for people who might be hesitant to watch this movie is that this could be seen as and as much as I don't want to admit this, but it is, I can see it, and the comparison is not unearned, that this can be seen as a cheaper version of Thor Ragnarok. And both Thor Ragnarok and Masters of the Universe do share very similar elements in terms of the way how they use the very fantastical settings of their respective characters, the way that their humor is added into the story, and the fact that, you know, they're both big franchise films. I initially really liked Thor Ragnarok when it came out, but on further rewatches, I like the movie less and less, and to the point that I really don't want to watch it anymore. And that could be something that may happen if I decide to rewatch Masters of the Universe, because a lot of the complaints that I have hearing about this film, it has to involve with, number one, the humor, and humor is always subjective. If you don't find this movie at least amusing, it's not laugh out loud funny. I had a good chuckles, but it's not some movie's gonna make you really laugh, then this movie can be annoying. If you're not a big fan of how Prince Adam is characterized, and that he is a very, how do I politely say this? That he is a character who is very timid by nature and forced to grow up in an environment in which he has to always be very reserved and in control of himself, which is definitely different from any character from Eternia. Now, the film uses to advantage to kind of contrast what makes Prince Adam a heroic character and why he was worthy of wielding the power of Graveskull. So that's a big plot element of the film that I'm surprised I'm not seeing people talk about much in that, because I'll talk about that in a little bit to get back on track. In regards to kind of the Thor Ragnarok comparisons, you can definitely find the humor not funny and annoying. The characterization of the characters are less fantastical than what you would think they should be. And of course, it's a very heavy special effects action movie now the action is very well done, very well choreographed, and good. Plainly stated, it's good. It has good action moments, nothing you've never seen before, but it is serviceable, and it does a very good job. And all those things don't necessarily make it very, oh, you gotta go out and watch this movie now. Because even I'm being hesitant, because I am aware that there are going to be people who are tired of those things, and especially if you've seen a lot of Marvel movies, whether in the past decade or in the past 5 years, that Master of the Universe will be seen as a lower grade Marvel film. Even though I don't believe so. I've found more entertaining out of this in recent Marvel films, but I also can understand if someone who is more used to seeing superhero films of that nature will see Master of the Universe and say, like, man, they're just trying to, this is He-Man, but try to do a Marvel MCU movie. You know what? That's valid. That's perfectly valid, and I can also see that as a way of not be interested to see that. So I want to give those points out and contentions of why someone other than myself would not enjoy it. Now, why did I enjoy the film? Quite simple. I enjoyed the character arc of Prince Adam. That was one of the things that really was driving me forward as I watched this film. Because even though I'm not a fanatic of He-Man, I still enjoy a lot of the imagery and the elements of He-Man. He is the ultimate boys power fantasy. He is, in all essence, he is the Captain Marvel, as in Billy Batson Captain Marvel, of the 80s. And he carries that very well. And the film does a good job of giving Prince Adam his character arc of him trying to overcome his timid nature, but not change the kind person that he is. Because one of the themes of the movie is that there is a lot of characters either mocking or belittling Adam's more timid and kind nature, and not because it's, but not for no reason, because in Eternia, with all the fantastical and sci-fi elements and dangers that exist, you want a royal leader to be able to have the courage to go up against it, and having that kind and timid nature, that's not going to help you when the sword is right in front of your face. And I really like that the film really portrays that character arc of Prince Adam trying to overcome that timidness of him, but not get rid of the kind person that he is truly inside. Because even when he has the power, his true sting relies on this character, not the power that his blade gives him. It's a very by the numbers type of moral message, but for a younger audience, it's a perfect message to give to younger people, especially children who are not very familiar with He-Man. And I think this does a good job of relaying that message through his character, and because of his kind nature, how that affects the people around him, specifically with the other character who gets a lot of attention, Man-at-Arms. I also enjoy the arc he's go through, and that he is a man who is fallen from grace because he failed to protect the royal family of Eternia, and he has to live with that shame until Prince Adam returns to Eternia and restores him to the man he knows that he can be, the man being Man-at-Arms. Speaking of returning to Eternia, if there is a critique that I actually do agree with to an extent, is that I would definitely have preferred if Adam was not sent to Earth and we don't have that first act of the movie, which is not set entirely on Earth, but most of it is on Earth. I would have not preferred to have that in the He-Man movie, and that's definitely not the film's strongest aspects, but I do like that what Adam experiences on Earth, I do like how they use it to fulfill his character arc by the end of the movie. So it's not for nothing, but I really do wish they would have done something different to show of Adam's exile. But it's in the movie, so I have to judge it for how they utilize the Earth aspect. And with one review, you can definitely nitpick of how a lot of that writing for Adam being on Earth for 15 years when he escaped Eternia from being overthrown by Skeletor and before he reunited with the Sword of Power. You can definitely nitpick of how he acts and how it should not make any sense of why he acts the way he does in the film. I would counter in that, sure, technically Adam should be more assimilated to acting like a human on Earth because he's been there for most of his life. But the movie really does paint a heavy-handed picture that Adam's eternal struggle to make sure that he doesn't forget Eternia. And there was a piece of dialogue he has with his roommate that Adam had seen a therapist to deal with all that trauma. And of course, no one believes Adam what he's saying is the truth, so the therapist concludes that Eternia and everything that happened to him as a kid is some way of him coping with a childhood trauma that he doesn't want to relive. Which, the irony is that what happened in Eternia is his childhood trauma. So I do appreciate the fact that the reason why it's so hard for him, for the most part, to assimilate to Earth is because he is trying his best to not forget where he came from. And of course, he was tasked. His only task when he escaped Eternia was to make sure to keep the Sword of Power safe. And he ends up losing it somewhere on Earth, and that would drive any person, not insane, but desperate to fulfill that mission. And so in between trying to find that sword all this time and fit in with Earth culture, yeah, I can see why by the end of it, Adam is just, he's just not all there. Now, a lot of it is kind of covered in humor and it's not as dramatic as I'm making it out. So it's not very evident, but at the end, if you pay attention to what the characters say and you try to put yourself in Adam's shoes, it's like, yeah, with what he experienced, how can you expect him to be normal? And I do like when that pain of his is used for comedy. He's on a date and he ends up essentially what you can consider trauma dumping on his date about what happened to him as a kid and sharing about Eternia. When should he have known better not to do that? You can definitely nitpick that. It's like, yeah, you're on a date. You shouldn't be trying to tell people your real history. But at the same time, you know, he wants to be seen and heard. And it's like, hey, I'm not crazy. What I'm saying is the truth. And he just picked the wrong person, wrong time to do that, because he ends up just trauma dumping, which, hey, that's something people do in real life. Like, regardless of what type of social situation you're in, if they're not mentally well, they'll end up sharing a bunch of things to someone who's technically a stranger. You know, that's something that happens in real life. So for Prince Adam to do it is not something that I don't see as a nitpick or like, oh, he should have known better. And plus, there was also critiques of the way he was acting once he discovered where the Sword of Power is. Again, looking through Adam's perspective, he finally found the sword, which means that he finally found his way home. So which means all of the rules and etiquettes of him, trying to be a human on Earth, that goes out the window, because it's like, that's my ticket home. That's my life's mission right there. And I'm not gonna sit here and listen to my boss talk about things he doesn't really care about, while the biggest thing that he's been missing all his life is just a phone text away. And that he's in that desperation to do whatever he needs to be done in order to get back home. Again, if you have seen the movie, you may not see it that way. I can definitely understand if you view Adam as just acting very weirdly for someone who was growing up most of his life on Earth. But from my take and my perspective, I view Adam as someone who is forced to be a human, but he knows in his heart that he is not, and he is always seeking that passage back home, because he misses home. And the film is very heavy-handed on the fact that, he spent all these years, pretending to be human, getting used to human culture and customs, but to never forget where he came from. And I think that's an important aspect that I am sad to see critics not talk about. That, to me, makes all the stuff on Earth not worth it, but it makes it important. And plus, you're not on Earth for long. Once you return to Eternia, which is maybe 35, maybe 40 minutes into the film, you stay in Eternia. You don't go back to Earth or anything like that. Now, one thing that people are universally praising about the film is, without a shadow of a doubt, will be Jared Leto's performance as Skeletor. And you may not have the iconic screeching voice he has in an 80s cartoon, but Leto still has essence of Skeletor and talks, acts, and he's Skeletor. Of all the different type of fictional characters he's played over the years and that he really tried to give it his all, I'm glad that of all of them, that he actually did not mess up on Skeletor. And also that he didn't act weird behind the scenes trying to play Skeletor. Because Skeletor, when done well, is most fun characters to ever see on screen, with just the most humorous, delightfully evil, cheesy dialogue. And Jared Leto understood the assignment, and he plays Skeletor in that manner perfectly. Perfect. No notes. We did a great job. And that's one of the best highlights of the film, that it does have a strong villain and Skeletor. That could be for most people the reason to see the entire film. And he's used just enough that when he appears on screen, you know you're gonna have a good scene. So I'm glad that he was not a misstep in how this movie was made. Other aspects of the film that I actually did enjoy, the actress who played Tila. I thought she did good to be essentially the, I guess if you look for it from a anime's perspective, she is the tomboy childhood friend of Prince Adam. Tila does fulfill, I guess, that trope very well, and he's very pretty, and whenever she's on screen, I you know I appreciate what I see. She's a character that I enjoy. She doesn't get any arc, and I do think it was a missed opportunity to genuinely do a romance with Prince Adam. I think that would have added more to their dynamic, but as a static character, she serves her purpose well, and she does have a more important relationship that's focused on with her father, that being Man of Arms. So that take more precedent, but I would not have mind seeing a romance between Adam and Tila. I want to actually go back to when I mentioned how people compare this film to a Thor Ragnarok, and while as I said it before, I definitely understand. I don't see it that way. To me, I actually compare this film more so to Guardians of the Galaxy, and that reason is solely because that despite all of the crass humor that can be sometimes found in the Guardians movies, what they excel at very well is having a lot of heart and character moments. And Master of the Universe I, does that very well. Much like with Guardians of the Galaxy with James Gunn. James Gunn, I think he is the best at balancing humor and drama in a way that one doesn't override the other to have a more complete film that everyone can enjoy. For Master of the Universe, directed by Travis Knight, is not up to James Gunn level, but I think he did a good try. There wasn't a lot of dramatic or impactful moments in which it was intercut by humor. I think maybe once or twice I can recall in my head. But whatever dramatic moments that do happen, the director wisely lets it happen. He'll try to add a funny element or some cheap joke. And once that moment has time to settle, then you move on to the next thing. And Guardians of the Galaxy, despite kind of the writing tropes that series makes, when those movies do have dramatic moments, they let them play out and follow the actions of the characters and don't try to intercut with humor unless it's something really clever. Master of the Universe just does the same for the most part, and so I was not bothered by the film's humor. Is it my type of comedy? No, necessarily. And if James Gunn or Taika Waititi style of humor is not your cup of tea, and you just have a real distaste for it, Master of the Universe is not going to win you over. Personally, for me, because I wisely have avoided Marvel style films for almost a decade, not quite, but for almost a decade, I can stomach seeing a film like that and not groan or roll my eyes for what they're trying to do, and just more so be like, okay, it's amusing and let it be. I'm sure someone will find it funny. That's how I choose to see it. I'm gonna go ahead and end it all because I'm almost hitting 30 minutes, so I better trim this review. But yeah, Master of the Universe, if you're a diehard fan, I will hesitate to go out and see it. I will wait till it's on streaming so that you can watch it at your leisure and see if that is a adaptation that you enjoy. If you're not a diehard fan, then I would recommend it's a fun matinee movie. So see it in the afternoon, like on a weekend, and enjoy yourselves, and then go along the rest of the day. It's a movie that can definitely entertain, especially if you're with someone, and just make a day of it. That's my review of Masters of the Universe. Shame that it's not doing the box office, but hey, that's movies for you. Not every movie's a success, but you know what? I'm glad I got to saw it while I was still in theaters, and hopefully on my rewatches, it doesn't suffer like the same way Thor Ragnarok does. I really don't. I really hope it doesn't. But as far as a first viewing or an only viewing, it's a good entertaining movie, and for most people, it is serviceable entertainment. So, thank you very much for watching, and this is Hack, sign out.